Okay, it's on now.
All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is John August. I'm the President of the New South Wales Humanists. Today we have our Secretary, Affie Adagio, who will be speaking on the language of love. Now, I think Affie's planning to talk for about half an hour, after which we'll go on to questions. But for the moment, Affie, I'll pass on to you now.
Thank you. Welcome everybody on this Easter weekend, which everybody's gone on holidays. So I'm happy that you've been able to come. First of all, an introduction. I'm a family therapist, and I'm also 12-step trained and a qualified NLP practitioner, and I've done my PhD on personal development, especially in drug and alcohol recovery. Everything from sex addiction to drugs and alcohol and any compulsions. So I needed to let you know, because I've had people in the past say, on what authority do you speak? That's what made me go right through to the PhD actually.
Oh, dear.
And so therefore...
So what?
Yes?
What qualifications do we need to ask a question?
Anything. But can you save your questions? I want to speak uninterrupted so that it doesn't go on for too long. And then at the end, which could be 5 or 5:10, 5:15, I will then open the floor to questions. So please make a note of any questions, all right? Otherwise it tends to go on and on and on. Now, what is 12 steps? Everybody's heard of AA and anything that's come down from 12 steps, like Codependence Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, all of those. 12 steps is a character building program that is based on Eastern and Western philosophy, psychology, and the practical parts of the Bible. The same is said, I mean, there were times that I would go to 9 meetings a week because I ran halfway houses for recovering alcoholics and drug addicts. I'm myself a recovering food addict and nicotine addict. So therefore, I also benefited from the program, but I had heard over 20,000 stories on compulsions and recovery. So that's why I say I'm trained in personal development and character building from the 12 steps. I'm also an NLP practitioner, as I said, recently qualified, although I knew a lot about NLP before then. Now, NLP is a modality that's based on everything in psychology that exists and philosophy, and they've turned it around so that it represents a practical understanding of all those methods and exercises that people can use for coping with their own problems. So that's it about the models. Now, up here I've got a graph on communication. And most relationships have problems because of poor communication. Everything comes from that. Problems with money, sex, anything you want to talk about comes from poor communication. I won't go into great detail about it or we'll never finish. But here on the board, can everybody see that graph on the board? You see the graph?
Can you read out the names at the bottom?
Yeah. The names at the bottom.
At the bottom of the
Words. I'm coming to that. All right, I'm coming to it. You will all get a handout, all right, at the end, that has all these things that I'm talking about. So, communication consists of 7% words, 38% tonality, your tone, and 55% physiology, your body language. How many knew that?
Oh, well, sort of.
Sort of. I thought I knew it until I did this course recently, the NLP course, and I saw that in a graph, and I was shocked. Right? I was shocked about the reality of it, because I often say to people, change your tone and I'll answer your questions. I'm going to sit down for a minute. We had some problematic members, and 2 years ago, the president and the vice president had gone off after the meeting. The other vice president, Fred, was in the kitchen washing up the dishes, and I was one of the ones left here. And these 5 people cornered me, and I was sitting down at a table, and 5, maybe there weren't 5, but it felt like 5, were yelling at me. What have you done about this? What have you done about that? Meaning the committee. And I said, lower your tone and I will answer all your questions. One of them, who's no longer with us because he was expelled, started screaming again. I said, lower your voice and I will answer your questions, all your questions. And he was still screaming at me and his physiology was threatening. Finally, another person who was smart said to him, she said, lower your voice and she'll answer our questions. And he wouldn't, so she pushed him away a little bit. He pushed him away a little bit and said to me, okay, these are our questions. This question, and I answered it. The next question, and I answered it. And he was keeping his tone and physiology, his behaviour, friendlier. And I answered all those questions. They may have not been happy about the answers, but I answered all their questions. And I felt okay within me. So, I often say that to people if I'm feeling threatened by their tone and by their physiology. The next point is, when people are attracted as friends, or when people fall in love, they have a certain way of communicating, which is friendly. And so, quite often, I'm also a family therapist, and I've worked for Unifam, a major marriage counselling agency. And I saw at least over 2,000 couples, both for them and in my private practice. I've lost count. And one of the main problems was they would ask, how is it that we were so in love and we got on so well, we could think about what the other person was about to say, and now we hate each other. And I noticed that the very important part of that was that they stopped using the right tone and the right behaviour when they communicated. If you notice when you're making new friends, you just have that different persona with them. And when you're in love, you act and behave differently. And then when you get used to each other, you find that the common interests you might have had are no longer there. And one's on the computer all the time with his back, say his back to his wife, and she is reading a book all the time, and they don't go out much anymore together, or they don't do things anymore, maybe gardening or whatever interests them together. So that's what changes, and the communication is affected. There. Now, what that affects is the rapport between people. The rapport between people has to be maintained. It's the core of the relationship. It earns you the right to ask what you want to ask. It's one of the principles of success, and creates a condition where the other person wants to be with you. So, you need to keep that in mind, right? Otherwise we become critical with each other and things like that. Let's move on then. The other important part is to know yourself. Socrates used to say that that's one of the most important things about you. You need to know yourself. So, knowing yourself is also understanding what is your favourite means of communication. You might be a visual person. Now, when I give you this, don't be troubled by all these intimate explanations. It's just important to know if you're a visual person. Mostly, a visual person will refer to colours and to things like goldfish and picturesque things. That's a visual person. And that person prefers to see people. Or you might be an auditory type person. And an auditory type person always looks to the side. An auditory person likes to be on the telephone a lot. Alright? So I'm a visual kinesthetic type. So people ring me and I can be dealing with them in minutes because I want to get off the phone. I'm not an auditory person. So if I see that the conversation's going on too long, I'll say, okay, let's meet, have a coffee, and let's discuss. Well, you come over to my place, or I'll come over to your place, or we'll talk about it. Or I'll see you at the meeting, and we'll talk about it. But not on the phone. I don't tell them not on the phone, but that's usually what happens. I have a friend who says, don't go, don't go, don't go, I have something else to tell you. But if I'm counselling, I settle in on the phone. I settle in and I say to myself, this is important, I have to stay and talk to this person. Right? And then kinesthetic is when a person looks down, or an auditory person will say sound words. I hear you, they're singing, or things like that. A kinesthetic person looks down a lot and wants action, wants to meet with you, have a coffee, things like that. So if you know that about yourself, then you are mindful to other people's preferences, right? So if you see them when you're talking to them and they're getting bored, then you need to be able to find out what do they prefer to do. Would they prefer to go somewhere? Would they prefer to do something else? So that's what Socrates said. Also, this covers how to respond to criticism resourcefully. And it's important because criticism can hurt your creativity. If you have friends or relatives who insist on criticizing things you do, that can really crush you. You know that. How many people, put your hands up, how many people get affected by criticism? I do. Right? Your creativity gets crushed.
I'd say that was a criticism, I think.
Do you? The next one of knowing yourself is personality types. Hippocrates started that, but he was doing it for illnesses, like a melancholic type would suffer from depression, and he would give them medicine that would attempt to deal with that. But from then on, although the medical profession didn't agree with that, what did happen is that